Welcome to This Week in Hastings Headline History, where we take a look back at what was making news in and around Hastings, Florida, over a century ago. These are stories directly out of the pages of the Hastings Herald, which was published weekly in the early 1900s. It is fascinating to hear what they were talking about as well as how they spoke about it in their articles from over 100 years ago. So sit back and enjoy as I read to you a few of the articles from This Week in 1920. Chicken coops, barns, and chimneys overturned. General havoc was created Wednesday afternoon via a zephyr that floated through town, overturning chimneys, smokestacks, and an occasional chicken coop or barn by way of variety. Where the breeze came from or where it went is a mystery, as this town seems to have suffered the main bulk of damage, surrounding places having escaped without even a dust cloud. The most serious damage occurred to the plant of the Hastings Cold Storage Company, where 2 smokestacks were blown down, one being broken in 2 and a small shed smashed by the falling debris. The result of the catastrophe to that plant was that the town was without lights Wednesday night and with no hope promised for either lights or ice before sometime Friday. As usual, whenever catastrophe hits Hastings, however, the town's sole amusement place was put out of business. The local motion picture show, which has been sponsored by Dr. Patrick Johnson and operated in a large tent, became a tangle of canvas and chairs in a very few minutes. The tent, Dr. Johnson states, will not be put up again. The future of the motion picture business in Hastings depending on the erection of an auditorium at some later time. A small barn owned by C.H. Mathis was reported to have been damaged, while reports of other small buildings that left their moorings and became spread over the surrounding territory were current Thursday. No persons were injured, and so far as can be learned, no stock killed. The loss of the cold storage company will amount to several $100s, aside from the inconvenience to the public. Attorney employed to collect taxes. As proof that the recently announced determination to collect all back taxes due the town council was not a bluff, the town council took final steps to arrange for the collection by force if necessary. Attorney J.V. Walton of Palatka was employed to take charge of the collection, and all aged and whiskered tax bills, of which there were many, were turned over to him. Attorney Walton will proceed immediately to make collection by whatever means may seem most likely to obtain results. The launching of the 9,500-ton Hastings. The 9,500-ton Hastings, named for Florida's Potato City because of the 100% Liberty Loan record made by Hastings during the war, was successfully launched from the waves of the Pensacola Shipbuilding Company last Saturday mid the cheers of the members of the Florida Press Association in an annual meeting at the Deepwater City. The vessel, a freighter of newest model built for the United States Shipping Board, is the 9th of 10 produced at the Pensacola shipyard for world commerce under the Stars and Stripes, and like her sisters will immediately leave on a long voyage, her first destination being Chile. Everything about the launching was done by signals. At the proper time, certain props under the vessel were removed. There was a breathless moment before a score of great sharp axes fell on the giant cables and let the Hastings slide to the sea, sending a monster wave to the opposite shore in a few seconds after she had settled into position. This story brings us to this week's Talk of the Times, an editorial talking about the lack of pride in Hastings as no one from the city took the time to go and watch their namesake ship launch. It reads, "Another example of the unfortunate lack of public spirit and community interest in this town was given last Saturday when the freighter Hastings, named for this town in honor of its 100% Liberty Loan record, was launched in Pensacola without the slightest notice or interest in the fact being shown locally. The ship, which now bears the name of this town, was christened by a woman from Daytona, while 2 women from St. Augustine acted as sponsors. The worst feature of the affair, however, is the fact that Hastings had been given plenty of notice of the proposed launching and had been invited to supply sponsors and to send one of its own women to christen the ship. A letter from the Shipbuilding Corporation's officials was received in this town about a year ago, announcing the fact that the ship would be completed early this summer and requesting that a Hastings woman be honored by being selected to christen it. Consequently, instead of exhibiting local pride in the honor paid the town and virtually assuming charge of the launching ceremonies, Hastings allowed the matter to go by default, and the ship was christened by a woman who did not even live in St. Johns County. 4 months ago, another freighter in another shipyard was named for a town no larger than Hastings and located more than 1,000 miles from the scene of the launching. That town not only sent its favorite daughter to christen the ship, but also sent a special Pullman car full of its leading citizens to attend the launching. That town had local pride and public spirit. They were boosters. Hastings, unfortunately, is not filled with boosters. In a general summing up of its intangible possessions, the column devoted to public spirit and local pride would contain a big 0. Almost any other town in the country having the wide reputation Hastings has for any given product, to say nothing of its many possibilities for future development, would possess a hustling, aggressive board of trade or some similar civic organization, which would see that the forwarding of the town's interest in the keeping of the town before the outside world was attended to in no uncertain manner. Hastings has no such organization, nor anything even remotely approaching such an organization. The best it has to offer is what is called a merchant association, the sole purpose of which, so far as is evident, is to keep tabs on the credit standing of the local citizens. Unquestionably, something serious is wrong with us, not with any particular part of us, but with all of us, collectively and individually. Towns of our size, or even similar, are boosting, pushing, and doing everything in their power to progress, even spending thousands of dollars for advertising in some cases. We have done nothing ourselves to further our own interest. We are doing nothing today, and we show no signs of intending to do anything at any time in the immediate future. If it is our ambition to be known as nothing except the national potato barrel, we are in a fair way to have that ambition realized. In adopting such an ambition, however, we must not forget that the barrel is a relatively unimportant part of a potato crop. If we are planning to live in Hastings and raise our children in Hastings in the name of all things worthwhile, let us make something of Hastings. We have everything to work with. We have natural resources, climate, people, railroads, river, and many other things. What we lack is one all-important feature: public spirit and boosters. The town site is here, the buildings are here, farms are here, the people are here. What is wrong with us is that we don't take a hold of them all and make something of the place. If we keep on the way we are going, we shall have nothing that will induce a man to stay here after he has harvested a single bumper potato crop and made enough money to buy a farm somewhere else. Somewhere in our environ, there must be a leader who has sufficient power to get the rest of us up. If so, let him be heard immediately. For if we don't begin to show signs of life now, when we are prosperous, we may as well declare ourselves dead and have a coroner's jury decide whether we died from suicide or merely from lack of energy. I hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Hastings Headline History. This podcast was brought to you by Presenting the Past, bringing history back to the present through historic presentations and the sale of treasures from days gone by. This episode was written and produced by me, Michelle Murillo, with the aid of vintage copies of the Hastings Herald. Now it's time for this week's musical memory, when we'll listen back to a song that everyone was listening to over 100 years ago. This week's song is a number that made a big hit in the Music Box Review Broadway show in 1924. It was composed by Irving Berlin, and in the show, it was a song that had the two main characters sitting on the phone singing the lyrics to one another. It has been recorded a number of times over the years by a number of artists: Pat Boone, Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, Doris Day, and even Miss Piggy. But here's a 1924 recording of All Alone, composed by Irving Berlin and performed by John McCormick.
Just like a melody that lingers on, you seem to haunt me night and day. I never realized till you had gone how much I cared about you. I can't live without you. All alone, I'm so all alone. There is no one else but you. All alone by the telephone, and I wonder when you'll call again. I'm all alone every evening, all alone feeling blue, wondering where you are and how you are, and if you are all alone too. Just for a moment you were mine, and then you seemed to vanish like a dream. I long to hold you in my arms again. My life is very lonely, for I want you only. All alone, I'm so all alone. There is no one else but you. All alone by the telephone, and I wonder when you'll call again. I'm all alone every evening, all alone feeling blue, wondering where you are and how you are, and if you are